What's going on, guys, and welcome to Who to Sign For. Now in this series I'm giving you my recommendations on what players to sign for a specific team in career mode. Before we go on, I will say that the signings you'll see aren't designed to be realistic, and that the player ratings and potentials of the players may vary depending on what database you're using and how they perform for you during the season. Obviously you don't have to follow all the tips. This is really just a set of guidelines to give you a hand if you're stuck for ideas and want some suggestions on what players you could sign for a certain club. This is mainly aimed at those you out there who maybe need to the game and just need a little bit of advice, or for those who are out there who want a few recommendations on what players to sign for a team that you may be using in career mode this year. And in today's episode of Who to Sign For, I couldn't resist but do them after yesterday's triumphant playoff final victory over the Terriers Huddersfield Town. Congratulations to Nottingham Forest, over 2 decades outside of the Premier League, and they're back in the top flight once again. Yep, they've finally got over that playoff curse and are into the Premier League for next season. Now, Nottingham Forest are a 4-star team with a budget, a really solid budget as well, of around 17 million after wage budget alteration. It's a good team. It's a really young team as well. Some really decent young talent here, such as Jonathan Panzo, Ryan Yates, and of course everyone knows about him, Brennan Johnson, who, if Forest didn't go up this year, I think would still be in the Premier League next season. And there's some great youngsters on loan as well. James Garner, of course, Max Lowe on loan from Sheffield United, and the guy I'm about to go past right now, Jed Spence. Goodness gracious me, this is one talented young fullback on loan from Middlesbrough. So it's a really good team, but their objectives in the first season are very, and I mean very strong indeed. They are to, I think I called Forest a 4-star team earlier, they're a 3.5-star team, actually 3.5-star team, but their objectives in the first season are to gain automatic promotion. That's not via the playoffs, that's the top 2, where Bournemouth and Fulham finished this year, of course, and reach the last 16 of the FA Cup. Yeah, not only have you got to finish in the top 2 in the Championship out of 24 teams, but you've also got to reach the last 16 of the FA Cup as well. To put it plainly, the board are expecting a lot of you in the first season. It's a really difficult challenge, because whilst this Forest team is really good, and it is one of the strongest sides in the division, I think it's the 5th best team in the division based on rating alone, so it's a very, very tough task in Season 1. Now, there are a few players that deals that come at the end of the year. Personally, I'd let them all go. I wouldn't give a new contract to any of them. Even though there are a couple of young players in there, their potentials aren't the best. So personally, I would look to sell them all. And there are some aging players who I'd look to shift on as well. Figueroa and Jordan Smith, now in their mid to late 20s. We're not the best starting overalls. I'd look to sell them. Lewis Graven might well retire in the first season. If he doesn't, I would look to sell. Jack Colback, of course, I'd look to sell him too. And I'd also look to cash in on Gaetan Bong as well, the long-serving wing-back. Obviously, Max Lowe is only on loan from Sheffield United, but personally, I'd let the Cameroonian go. So we're not in Forest. Of course, our budget, starting off very, very solid budget for the Championship, around 17 to 17.5 mil. Lots of money to work with in the seconds here. I did decide to try and sell a few players to begin with. What you will notice, though, is it is quite hard to sell the players you've got here, because their contracts are quite high based on their current overall rating. So, you know, the players that we're aiming to sell are on reasonably pricey weekly wages, which a club who can afford to buy them might not be able to afford to pay their weekly wages, if that makes sense. You'll notice here we did sell Figueroa, but the Smith deal fell through. Jack Colback, for example, is 67 rated, on 12.5 grand a week. Gaetan Bong is in 10.5 grand a week, and he's only 66 overall. So the clubs that are putting in the bids probably don't want to pay that sort of money on a weekly wage, because a player of that sort of ability should be on like a quarter of the current weekly wage they're currently on at Nottingham Forest. So I would recommend trying to sell those aging players, such as Gaetan Bong, such as Jack Cole. If you can't sell them, then look to swap them out. But in terms of new sides, we're not in the Forest. Where would I look to strengthen? Well, again, it's a really good team. It's a really young team, but I would look for some more firepower up top. Now, you've got the youngster Davis on loan from Aston Villa. Really good season under Steve Cooper this year. And of course, Brennan Johnson, a natural out-and-out winger, plays up top in the Forest team, a 5-3-2, but I would recommend signing 2 really good strikers who are your own, not on loan, and out-and-out strikers too. And one of the players I'd recommend is this year's second highest scorer in the Championship, Dominic Solanke of Bournemouth. 23 years old, 75 rated, and his contract's up coming the end of the year. That means you can get him for under the valuation of around 6.5 mil. I believe that's what we spent to get the former Cherry in. He's a really great striker. Again, second highest scorer in the championship this year, only behind the deadly Serbian Alexander Mitrovic. And again, 75 rated, 23 years old. Physically, he's a great all-round player. You know, not the quickest, but not the slowest. Not the strongest, but not the weakest. All round, he's really solid. And he's 6'2", so decent in the air as well. Personally, what I would do is drop Brennan Johnson to the bench. I know the youngster, local lad from Nottingham, but now represents Wales on the international stage, is their highest potential player, but he's playing out of position in the striker role, so he will be operating at a temporary decrease. I'd have him off the bench to bring on as an impact sub in late game situations, utilising that electric pace. Now, I would recommend a new CM as well. You'll notice two of their three central midfielders are currently on loan here, including James Garner. I would look for a new CM that's yours, and this is a really good option. Sean Longstaff of Eddie Howe's Newcastle United, also at a contract at the end of the season. You can get in front of the valuation. We actually gave Newcastle back Jack Colback, which I thought was really, really cool. Obviously, Colback, Sunderland, Newcastle, played for both, and we gave him back to the Magpies here to get Longstaff in as well. So that softens the wage budget deficit we'll have. Longstaff's on about 10 grand a week extra, but otherwise it would have been 22.5 grand a week extra in our wage budget. So yeah, we gave them Colback, who we wouldn't need anymore as he is aging in the final year of his contract. Longstaff is like 10 years younger and a great energetic player as well. Solid defensive stats, solid dribbling stats. As a box-to-box, I think he'd do really well in this Forest team. And again, personally, I'd have James Garner, the youngster, on loan right now, dropping to the bench and bring in Sean Longstaff to the first 11. So once again, you see the deal fell through here for Gaetan Bong. That's a common problem you'll find because their wages are quite high based on their current overall. They don't really justify that contract. It is quite hard to sell, so it's best to try and swap. But I did try and buy a new striker to partner Dominic Solanke. Again, Davis is on loan from Aston Villa. He's had a really solid season under Steve Cooper, but I would recommend bringing in a new striker as he's not your forward, and I think this would be a brilliant option for Nottingham Forest, and I could see it happening in real life as well. Eddie Nketiah, future uncertain with the Gunners, as we know, out of contract at the end of the season, which means you can get him for under the valuation, spend around £3.75 to £4 million. His wages are reasonably high, but he's got a decent starting overall. He's good enough to go right in your first 11 and partner Dominic Solanke, and he's got 79 potential as well. Personally, I think he should have 80 or 81 potential and deserves a little upgrade over the summer, at least in my opinion. But at 22 years old, really good young forward, very quick as we know, and a decent finisher of the ball as well. I personally would drop Davis and Johnson to the bench, have them coming off the subs bench, and having Dominic Solanke and Eddie Nketiah as your new starting duo up top to add more firepower to this Nottingham Forest team. So with the remaining money, I did decide to bring in a new central midfielder as well. It's Alan Sonora of Independent Independiente. Not going to pretend I know much about this guy because I obviously don't. He's 22 years old, 73 rated, but once again, his deal's up come the end of the year, so you can get him for under the valuation. We spent just 3.35 mil to bring him in, which is an absolute dirt cheap signing for a player of his quality. And what you'll notice with Sonora is he's naturally listed as an attacking midfielder, and if you want, you can play him further forward. But what I would do personally is change his position to CM. I think that's where he'll be best at. Once again, you'll have to put him on a decent contract for a championship team, but again, it's his age that's the key here. He's really young, he's in his early 20s, he's only going to get better, and I believe he's got 79 or 80 potential as well. And you look at his listed stats here and his listed positions, he can play all through the spine of the middle, and I love players that are like that. They can play further forward, sit deeper, or right through the heart. This guy's got some brilliant versatile stats, and again, what I would do personally with a good stamina, not terrible defensive stats, but a great passer of the ball, is change his position to CM and drop Ryan Yates to the bench. He's a great youngster, Ryan Yates, but I'll put him on the bench. He's playing slightly out of position CM and not CDM, and have Sonora starting as part of your midfield trio. So the final signing I made once the season ticket money came in was a new left back for the future. Once again, Max Lowe is only on loan from Sheffield United, and Gaetan Bong is now in his 30s, so what I would personally do is bring in someone for the future. I didn't have enough money for my main target, which was Josh Doig of Hibernian, but this guy isn't going to play much in the first few seasons, but he's here for the long-term future. It's Ben Krazine of Aston Villa. He's 17 years old and only 58 rated, so really, really lowly rated, but again, in the first 2 or 3 years, he'll just be squad depth emergency cover in the background, growing quietly as you do. We gave Aston Villa Gaetan Bong to reduce our wage budget, brought in a younger player. Yes, he's several ratings lower than Gaetan Bong, but he's over a decade younger at just 17 years old. He's one for the future, and that's the key with Nottingham Forest. He's got 81 potential, so gross 23 ratings, and again, could be a really solid left back in the future. For now, yeah, you're not going to play him much, of course, at 58 overall, but he's emergency cover and a backup for Max Lowe. So that was it for Nottingham Forest. We spent the vast majority of our money on our new signs. We only actually sold one player in Figueroa that, of course, swapped Jack Colback and Gaetan Bong. The players coming in: Dominic Solanke, Eddie Nketiah, Ben Krazine of Aston Villa, Sonora, Sean Longstaff coming in. Some great young English talent, everyone in their early 20s, or in the case of Krazine, 17 years old. The team got much younger and much brighter for the future, and again, playing this 5-3-2, great new firepower up top in Eddie Nketiah and Dominic Solanke as well. The question is, could we hit those really, and I mean really tough objectives of gaining automatic promotion, finishing in the top 2, and reaching the last 16 of the FA Cup? Very tough task for a 3.5-star championship team. Well, as per usual, we simulate the end of the season, and as you can see, well, after the final day, there were 2 more fixtures to play as we went into the playoffs. I felt for sure if we weren't in the top 2, we were definitely in the playoffs. We had a pretty solid season as I was watching the simulation, but we had Bournemouth, who finished runners-up this year in the playoff semi, lost the first leg 1-0, but as we went through to June, there was a final against the Huddersfield Luton Town, who were also in the playoffs. But it was Luton who beat us at Wembley 3-1. So more playoff heartbreak for Nottingham Forest. And whilst we did finish in 5th place and go into the playoffs, it was the team that finished in 3rd this year who managed to edge us in the final at Wembley and make it up to the Premier League alongside what was eventually Fulham, the champions, just like in real life, and West Bromwich Albion, the baggies, as well. So playoff final heartbreak for Nottingham Forest. We didn't get the top 2 like the board wanted, though, as you'll see here, very unlucky to go all the way to the playoff final, just like in real life, but this time fell at the final hurdle. But to be honest, I wouldn't say that was a terrible season. You know, once again, like I said at the top of today's episode here, I think the Forest are, I believe, the 4th or possibly 5th highest rated team in the Championship. You know, Fulham are definitely going to go up automatically, and probably one of Bournemouth or West Brom will join them, because I believe they're the 2nd and 3rd best teams. But the playoffs to me is a decent run, and you'll see in the FA Cup as well, we were asked to reach the last 16. We did that. We got knocked out by a Premier League side, although of course they are swapping places with Forest next year, Norwich City, and going down to the Championship. But we hit our cup objective, but sadly failed at the final hurdle in the Championship playoff final. Bit of a shame, but once again I will say this is a young Nottingham Forest team. It's a good Nottingham Forest team, but there are stronger teams in the Championship, so it's going to be really tough to hit that objective of finishing in the top 2 in the very first season. To get to the playoff final and only losing 90 minutes to Luton Town, it's not bad, is it? You know, it's not a terrible season. Yes, we miss out on the grand prize, but all things considered, it's not a disastrous season for Forest. And the most important thing in season 1, like I said, is laying down the groundwork. You know, replacing some of those senior players like Jack Colback and Gaetan Bong, and looking to bring in those young talents for the future. That's exactly what we did with the likes of Sean Longstaff and Alon Sonara, and of course the 2 lads up top, Eddie Nketiah and Dominic Solanke as well. Yeah, it's a really solid team, Nottingham Forest, and there's no doubt about it, there'll be a lot of people's career mode team next year, and probably mine as well, if I'm being totally honest here. The City Ground will play host to Premier League football once again for the first time in over 2 decades. What a job Steve Cooper did. Who could have foresaw it as well at the start of the season, when I believe they lost 6 of their first 7 games. What a turnaround, what a season. I sadly couldn't replicate the success like in real life. I fell at the final hurdle with this Forest team, but they're a fantastic team to do a career mode with. A great RTG side. I highly recommend them if you do want to do an RTG, and I know there'll be a lot of people's main choice next year as well. But that will end today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys. Big thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed it, and if you have enjoyed today's episode, then please do drop a like. Congratulations once again to Nottingham Forest back in the big time. Much love to you all. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you for the next episode of Who to Sign For very soon.